Well, I wanted to do this video a week or so ago, but I thought I'd wait until after January 20th because I was thinking maybe, just maybe, there's that slight chance, that minutia of a chance that a miracle can still happen to turn this thing around. Now, you know, when I say turn this thing around, you have to put that together because I'm talking in code like I have been in the recent past because of what's going on right now, this whole big shit that's going on. Well, obviously that didn't happen. And January 20th rolled around, and sure enough, that big event happened. It's that proverbial nail that got hammered into the coffin. So now we're left with certain people at certain positions in 4 years. I would 4 years of tough 4 years coming ahead of us. Now, ever since that first Tuesday of November, ever since then, and everything that led up to now, I've been having a hard time dealing with this whole thing. I was just distraught. I was just flat out distraught. And I know some of you are probably still in that fetal position, still wondering, man, I can't believe what just happened. I can't believe this is happening, right? I can relate to you. I know how you feel. But I want to offer you a key as to how we can get through and win in these next 4 years. Okay? Not just survive, but get through and stay on top in these next 4 years. But before I do that, I want to let you know that I'm going to approach this video through the lens of traditional Catholicism. And part of that would include spiritual warfare or diabolic warfare. Because actually part of traditional Catholicism has a lot of that embedded in it. I want to use a lens that would incorporate that in this perspective. And this is important because, all this feeling, a lot of us who are feeling this way, who are feeling disappointed, sometimes many of us, or maybe many of us, are having a hard time sleeping. Maybe it's affecting our physical well-being. Maybe it's affecting our relationships within our marriages, our families, with siblings or parents or in-laws, friends, workers. It's affecting us. Maybe it's affecting us in where financially, or just it just has negative effects on us. Well, I want to refer to a great theologian, a Thomistic theologian and exorcist, the well-renowned Father Chad Ripperger. And this exorcist, in many of his conferences, he talks about spiritual warfare. One thing he mentions of the various levels of diabolic warfare, of spiritual warfare, there's several levels to that. The most common one being temptation, and the most uncommon and rare being full-out blown possession. But somewhere in the middle there, above temptation, is something called oppression, in where the diabolic, where Satan and his minions attack us directly from the outside. Okay, attacks us from the outside. And there's two parts of that oppression. There's a direct oppression and an indirect oppression.
Then the next level is oppression. This is where they attack people from the outside. Now there's two forms of oppression, and I've never talked about this before, but Father asked me to talk about stuff in relationship to the upcoming elections. And this is how it plays in. This next level of diabolic influence or spiritual warfare, oppression, is where the demons attack you from the outside. This is when they attack your relationships, your finances, they attack your property, sometimes your health, things of that sort. But the oppression can be in a variety of different ways. Now there's a twofold distinction in relationship to oppression. There's indirect oppression and there's direct oppression. Direct oppression is when they actually attack your particular life. They attack you, your health, your relationships, your finances, how things are operating within your home, etc. So they attack you directly. But then there's a certain level of spiritual warfare that all of us deal with, where we have to deal with the indirect fallout from oppression. This is when things like politicians and things like that, who are under the influence of the diabolic, who do essentially evil things. Let's cut to the chase. We are not living in a political atmosphere where there are differences of ideas. We are living in a atmosphere where it's good on one side and evil on another. It's not a matter of differences of ideas. The ideas that they throw out are just to promote their evil. It's that simple. If you cut to the chase of it and get down to the bottom of it, there's certain people that are just nefarious. They're just doing evil things. And how do you know this? Every single thing they do maximizes damage within the context of what they're able to do. This is the type of thing that actually ends up affecting us. But the point being is that we have to recognize that this indirect oppression that we suffer is when other people do evil things to get demons involved in culture, in society, in the church. It's not a rocket science to see that there's a fundamental problem with evil in the church right now.
So that now that we know the reality of spiritual warfare and everything that's going on here, I want to offer you a solution, a key to getting through these next 4 years. Okay, a key to not just surviving, but to keeping your head above water and even coming up on top. And the key I'm talking about, I kind of coined a name for it. I call it foundational orientation. Foundational orientation. Now, one of the things that led me to this discovery, which was always in front of me, was something that I've heard several times throughout these last few weeks, since November 3rd. I've heard several times people saying, you know what we ought to be doing? We need to imitate that great saint, Saint Padre Pio. And we need to do what he always recommended. It's kind of like a spiritual formula. And he always used to say, pray, hope, and don't worry. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Now, when I first heard that, and I started kicking that around in my head, boy, I had a hard time. I really had a hard time with that whole thing. I'll tell you why I had a hard time. Start with the end part of that formula. Don't worry. Okay, that's kind of like being alone or being on a small little island way out in the ocean. And then you just hear the news that a tsunami, or depending on what ocean you're at, a category 5 slow-moving hurricane is imminent. How does one not worry? That's pretty difficult not to worry that such a catastrophe is imminent. It's going to happen. Okay, kind of hard not to worry. It's like hard not to worry, knowing what would happen if certain people were to occupy certain positions, especially in this country. And thinking and knowing all those things, man, it's a lot. It's a lot to make people worry, which I did. So that I struggled with, this whole thing about don't worry, and not only not worrying, this hope. Well, I've had hope. I thought a lot of us have had a lot of hope. Keep hope, have hope. Something will happen. Something will happen. And as after November 3rd, as weeks moved on, we had glimmers of hope here, glimmers of hope there, hope, and then all that hope is gone. All that hope is gone. And then now it seems kind of hopeless, right? It seems hopeless. So that was hard. But it's in there that led me to that first part of that formula, which is that whole pray part, right? Now, we live in America, and the word prayer can take on so many different meanings, between religions or people that don't have religions. Prayer could mean a thought in the head, some whispers of words under your breath, words said out loud, actions, all sorts of things. Prayer can have all sorts of things. But I'm Catholic, and I connected to my Catholic roots, and I approached that word prayer through a Catholic perspective. And for us Catholics, the highest form of prayer is the Mass, the Catholic liturgy. That is the highest form of prayer there is. And so when I focused on that, boom, something that was right in front of me just revealed itself. This is the key to getting through these next 4 years, to doing more than just surviving. Well, at least surviving, but doing more than just surviving, to make a difference, make a positive impact so that these next 4 years aren't wasted. It was right in front of me in that form of prayer, the liturgy. And the liturgy includes the Eucharist, okay, which is the source and summit of our faith, the source and summit of our faith. I want to show you something. I want to show you because they say pictures speak more than 1,000 words. I'll try to limit 1,000 words, and I want to show you what inspired me to come up with this thing called foundational orientation. Just look at this. So that was a young priest performing the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And the Mass, the highest form of prayer, because it is the unbloody representation of Christ's sacrifice on Calvary. It is the source and summit of our faith. That was a priest. And for a lot of you who are wondering what they just saw, that is the traditional Latin Mass. For a lot of you Catholics who, like me 6-7 years ago, didn't recognize, if I had seen what I just showed you 7 years ago, I would not have recognized it, because that to me was not the Mass that I knew, the Mass that I grew up with, okay, which most of us grew with, the new Mass that came in after the 60s. But for those who are unclear, that is a traditional Latin Mass. And it's said by a wonderful priest, a young priest belonging to the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest. And just a little bit of a plug for those priests, because I love all priests that offer the traditional Latin Mass. Here in Chicago, we're blessed. We have the Fraternal Society of St. Peter. We call the FSSP. We have diocesan priests here. We have many priests who do the traditional Latin Mass. But of all the priests and masses I've been to here in the state, in Wisconsin, Florida, and other states, I got to be honest with you. These guys here, this is my humble opinion, all right? They have the most efficacious Mass, traditional Latin Mass. I just got to say that. So let me go back to this idea of a foundational orientation, starting with the word foundation. Foundation is so important, okay, in our spiritual life, and it just, period, so important. Just ask anybody in the construction field, people who have been in construction, especially those up north where winters are cold and things freeze. Ask a mason if he would build, whether that be a chimney, a wall, or something, if he would even entertain the thought of building one outside without a foundation, without a concrete foundation. He'd look at you and think you're crazy, because he knows here up north, in the winter, the ground freezes. We have this kind of a freeze-thaw thing where the ground subtly moves. And if you build something on that kind of ground, eventually, that mason's mortar, the stone, the bricks, whatever he uses, is going to start crumbling and then fall apart. Same thing applies with home builders. They would never think of building a home unless there's a solid foundation, a foundation that goes well deep beyond what we call the frost line, the area where the ground freezes. Here in Chicago area, it's about 42 inches. So a mason would have to pour a concrete foundation that goes below that 42-inch mark, so that they have it solid. They can build anything on top of that without it moving and breaking because of the ground movement. And so with that, prayer has to be our foundation. Okay, prayer has to be our foundation. And then the second part of that, orientation. I showed that clip to you because of the priest, his orientation, his physical body, it was turned facing what we call east, facing God. In Latin, that orientation is called ad orientem. Ad to orientem, east, to east. Or otherwise, it could be loosely translated as facing east. Because traditionally for Catholics, we've always prayed facing east. We've built our churches facing east. The altar, the tabernacle, where the priest faces east. And why east? Well, on the second coming, Christ will come from the east. And that's why prior to the crazy changes in the 60s, everything was oriented to the east, toward God. So the priest is facing the altar, and the altar has with it the tabernacle, and the tabernacle has inside it the Eucharist. And the Eucharist is the true presence of Christ, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ himself. All right? He's facing God. And with traditional altars, you also have the crucifix there. So the priest is oriented. He's facing God. And that is so important, because we can get so distracted If you compare a traditional priest doing the traditional Latin Mass and another priest doing the new Mass, and where we're all familiar with the priest is turned around. He's facing all the people. He's facing the people and he has his back to God. All right? Just the opposite. If you think about it, which one of these priests, a traditional Mass where the priest is facing God, or the new Mass where the priest generally is mostly is facing the people, who do you think can be distracted more? Yeah, the priest facing the people. You see now, Father Chad Ripperger, he mentions that the diabolic, the devil, Satan, and his minions, they have certain principles. One of the principles that they have is a simple principle called anything but God. Anything but God. Anything. If the devil can get us to think or focus on anything, and sometimes that could be disguised as something good, all right? Not just bad. We may think it is a good thing that we're focusing on that, but if we think about what we're focusing on and we think about God, if that focus is taking us away from getting closer to God, that is something the devil wants us to do, is get our focus away from him. So it's so important to keep our focus. One thing when I'm at Mass, and it's all about God, it's all about the priest is facing God, and my focus is not on the priest, because a priest, everybody is facing God. Every action that the priest is doing is facing God. Periodically, he'll turn around. There's certain periods when the priest turns around and faces certain people, and they'll say something like, Dominus vobiscum. And then they turn right back around and face God again. But I noticed in this one priest, and many, like I said, many of the other priests at the institute, they will turn around and look at this. They will have their eyes closed, or looking downward, or looking elsewhere, but not at the people. His focus is so much on God, on the holy sacrifice of the Mass that he's doing at that moment. And he'll turn right back around. His focus, his orientation, his physical orientation, his physical movements are so important. And I've said this before. Our physical connects us to the divine. There's many ways our physical actions connect us to divine, and I won't go too much in that there, but just you might want to check out that one link the one episode I talked a little bit about that over up here. And you see, my friends, that is the example we need to follow. One of the things I find very efficacious from this particular priest and the other priests at the Institute is his movements, how reverent he is, how his thought and movements are just so focused on God. The way he raised the Eucharist, and the way how slow he did. I mean, just look at this. Look at how meaningful his actions are, how reverent his actions are. And like I said, everything that they do physically, their orientation to God, everything that their physical orientation helps that priest become closer to God. And that is the key lesson. That key lesson that we need to learn from this example of that priest is our orientation, our foundational orientation. Now remember how I said, Father Ripperger says that the devil, the diabolic, one of their principles is anything but God. Well, you know what? There's many things that can distract us. in our prayer life, in our spiritual life. But in this video, I want to bring up one particular area. You know how in the new Mass that I mentioned, the priest turns around towards the people? Well, with all this stuff going on, and all these negative things were in all the mess that's been happening, a lot of us turn towards what? Social, right? Social. And we were just hungry to connect with people and thoughts and posts and ideas and videos of things that supported ideas. We were just hungry we just needed to be around people with like minds, especially if you're like me. You have a lot of friends, family members who think opposite, who don't agree with you, who actually supported the other guy, and you hear all their stuff and they're rejoicing on January 20th. They're rejoicing in all these things that are unfolding now, that is happening. It's hard when you see those things. It's painful to see, especially when it comes from loved ones. It's a big distraction. It's so much a distraction that the whole concept of media needs to be really looked at as a huge distraction. I would highly recommend going on Netflix, and I know Netflix is not a good, a lot of people, it's not, what can I say? It is what it is, right? But there is a movie on there called Social. That's right. You need to check that out, because it's made by people who are part of the creation of this whole thing in the beginning, who had thoughts of, wow, this whole thing about media, it's going to be great. It's going to connect people, and there's many good things that's going to come. That's all they were thinking about in the beginning, and then later on, the flip side of that, they didn't realize, wow, it's more dangerous than we thought. Because it's amazing to see how certain people, a handful of people can take billions in the world and put like us billions on these little strings like puppets. In the movie they showed this figure here. They talk about how we're controlled like these little puppets. Man, it's disturbing, but you need to look at that. They're approaching it strictly on a secular level, and how dangerous it is psychologically, and just how dangerous it could be. And you know what? That's the danger of it, is our turning away from God and gobbling up all of this stuff out there on media. Gobbling it up, all these notifications, just to be, really think about this. Anything but God. It's a simple thing. Anything but God. Even if it comes across as good. It's good. Is it good to connect with people? Oh yeah, it is. It's good to wish somebody a happy birthday. It's good to see the positive things in people's lives. But really think about this. How much of time are you putting into media? Are you putting an hour into it? Are you putting 2 hours? 3? Are you addicted to it? And you think about that time that we're putting into this, just so we can stay connected. And you think about that time and you wonder how much of that time could have been spent towards building our foundation and keeping our focus on what we need to focus. Okay? How much? And we need to ask ourselves that. As a traditional Catholic, I think about my foundation of prayer and what that consists of. At the bare minimum, our foundation should consist of the rosary. Time-wise, what is that? Depending, if you're doing only 1 to 3 decades a day, that's right there, 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, if you're doing it in Latin, like I do, and like y'all should be doing, that's closer to 25, 30 minutes, okay? If you're doing all three, the traditional rosary, where you're doing all 3 decades, well, right there, that's about an hour and a half. That's just the rosary. Mass, do you have time? Is it in your schedule to take part in the holy sacrifice of the Mass, to be a daily communicant, at the very least on Sundays? Okay, they're right there. There's another hour. Travel time, hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the whole travel thing. So right there, we're at 2 to 3 hours. Is reading our catechism, especially reading our Catholic faith, knowing our Catholic faith, reading the Catechism of Trent, reading the Bible. Catholics were horrible at reading the Bible. Okay, if you don't have a Douay-Rheims Bible, get a Douay-Rheims Bible and read that. Take 20, 15, 20, 30 minutes of your time a day. We need to do that because Father Ripperger says one of the key things of fighting spiritual warfare is...
One of the principal ways to combat in spiritual warfare is you have to know your faith. It's not good enough just to say a few prayers here and there. You have to continually learn about your faith so that you don't get sucked into this indirect oppression. Because if you don't, it's so toxic.
So in these next 4 years, we need to work on that, on making sure our foundation is strong, making sure the rosary is part of that. Hopefully it's a daily rosary, making sure the holy sacrifice, all the sacraments are part of that foundation. See, once we have that, once we have the proper foundation, once we have the proper orientation, our orientation to God, if we're following that priest, his actions, we're following the priest's actions at the Mass in our own lives, in our daily lives, and we're following that, then we can build anything on top of that. Then whatever your talents are, if you're a writer, you can write about the truth. If you're a speaker, speak about the truth. If you're a YouTuber guy or YouTuber gal, you could do a lot of these videos that in these next 4 years about the truth. If you just want to share this with family, if you're head of the household, share this with your family. Raise your kids in the truth. Share the truth. Find your voice. Find your talents. Apply all those. Do good. But we can't do that unless our foundation is solid and our orientation is focused on God. All right. So until next time, like I always say, connect to your roots. If you're Catholic, connect to your Catholic roots. Make a difference. Make a good difference. Engage in life's spiritual battles. Don't just man up. Don't just woman up. Be like St. Benedict and BenUp. God bless you. Hey, this is Rex. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you like how I use my Catholic roots, my indigenous Igorot roots, and my adopted American roots to navigate through life's messy waters, then hit the subscribe button. Also, hit that bell so you can stay notified whenever I do a new video. Until then, thank you very much, and God bless you.